All right, good evening. Please open your Bibles, if you would, to Luke chapter 2. That's Luke chapter 2. Tonight I titled this sermon, Raising a Man of God. Many of you all know that Allie and I just had our first baby boy. So, this is kind of my brain child right now, just kind of thinking about this. So now when Allie and we had our first daughter, I had a choice to make, Fawn. She's our oldest. She's 5 now. Be selfish and keep living the life I was living, or make a change and give this child the best life that I could. Girls seem to fall for men who have characteristics of their father, and I want the best future for my girls. And so I began to take steps to change my life for the better. And in short, I applied myself to my family, and then through Allie's faithfulness, I applied myself to God. Now, as this was going on in my life, I was restored to Christ here at Choctaw. I stepped up in my career plumbing, and I did very well, and I spent all my extra time serving this church body. And soon after, Allie and I had Birdie, our middle child now, which sounds so weird to say. And the Choctaw leadership in that same month we had Birdie, they had seen my passion for the word and made me an offer I couldn't refuse. And if you know Mike, that would be really funny. So like Fawn, when Birdie came along, I had choices to make. Stay plumbing, doing what I'm good and comfortable at, or start my career all over and step out on faith into a position that allowed me to learn about God and also to serve Him better. This new position also called me into a spiritual maturity and discipline that I'd never considered myself having to deal with before. I in no way wanted to take a position that would cause this body to stumble. And it took a month for Allie and I to respond, and after a long time we decided that this was the move we wanted to make, was to work here and worship. And it's now been 3 full years, and God has blessed Allie and I with a beautiful baby boy. And I find myself in my mind again because I have more choices to make now. He's going to turn into the man he will be one day based off the template of the man, myself, that I set for him. And I find myself pondering how I'm going to assure myself, if that is even a thing I can do, that I can raise this boy into a man of God. And so I figured, what better place to figure that out than where we read about Jesus as a child, one of the longest passages, and figure out how they were raising him. And so that is what we will be exploring tonight. I'm not going to give you some secrets about how to raise your child into a man of God. I don't have that. But we're going to look at the raising of the man of God that we know is Jesus, and then pull some things out of that. And so again, we'll be in Luke chapter 2, verses 41 through 52. And hopefully we can apply some of these things to ourselves, and if we're already parents, some of these things will make us feel a lot better, I think, in the end. So let's go ahead and begin this little study. We're going to read verses 41 through 42. That's where we will begin. Now his parents went to Jerusalem every year at the feast of the Passover. And when he was 12 years old, they went up according to custom. Now we can tell that Jesus' parents were faithful in keeping their routine to God from these 2 verses. That's what it said. The custom was of their faith, of the Jews, and he's 12 years old, and his parents every year went to the feast of the Passover. And so I must have a godly routine if I want to raise a godly child. Does it benefit our children to be faithful in our routines to God? I have to ask myself. And I believe it is. I mean, how else do our children know what we do? Well, they see us doing it. Our routines, our habits. So if I have godly routines, if I have godly habits, chances are my child will have the same thing. Am I taking them to church to worship? Am I taking them to the breakfasts and the Bible studies and the fellowship things that we do so that they can get the mentorship that they need to grow? I don't know, it's got to be part of my routine. My routine has to be involved with the church and with God. And you can bet that I plan to have him and my children, we already are, involved in almost everything we can be. I'm always being told, don't stretch yourself too thin. Well, there's no other place I want to be spread out than with my church family. You know? I want to hang out with all of you and fix all of your plumbing. That's my favorite thing to do. But believe it, that's some of my favorite things to do, is to be with you all. And so, I have to have a godly routine. And I have to have them involved in that routine until that becomes their routine. All right? That's what I learned from these first two verses. Verse 43 through 45, next. And when the feast was ended, as they were returning, the boy Jesus stayed behind in Jerusalem. His parents did not know it, but supposing him to be in the group, they went a day's journey. But then they began to search for him among their relatives and acquaintances. And when they did not find him, they returned to Jerusalem, searching for him. Boy, this is a big one. Even godly parents fail. That's something that I needed and still need to understand sometimes. These are the parents of Jesus, and they just did the Home Alone movie, okay? They left Jesus in a whole other town in Jerusalem. They were a whole day away, 24 hours. Now that's not very far. I guess if you're in a car, it's much further. You know, you're walking, not so much. But they're going in caravans with their whole families. Perhaps Jesus is used to going to other places and hanging out with his family, and we do these things, and this is unlike him. Well, I don't know. I don't know Jesus' character at this point, but I do know that his parents had made this trip how many times? At least 12 for sure. But this is also a Jewish custom. They were Jews, so they'd been doing it their whole lives. It's something that happened every year. It was their routine, and it was routine to have Jesus with them in the caravans, right? Perhaps it was even routine for Jesus to disappear with the family. But the routine didn't work, and sometimes routine doesn't work. You have to remember that. Their eyes weren't on the ball, and they came up lacking. Imagine how awful of a fail that is. Man, Allie came home one time when I was babysitting Birdie, and I had fallen asleep on the front couch, and Birdie was on the front porch. Oh, yeah, that's not what she said to me. But that was probably 15, 20 minutes. Imagine a whole day. I felt awful. Imagine how Mary, must have felt. Imagine how Joseph must have felt. And so this passage reminds me that even though as I'm working really hard to raise children of God, even as a godly parent, I'm going to fail, even when I'm doing my best. 46 through 47. After 3 days, they found him in the temple, sitting among the teachers, listening to them, this is Jesus, and asking them questions. And all who heard were amazed at his understanding and his answers. I want to get something very, very clear real quick. I hear a lot of people who will speak about this passage just real quickly off the cuff and say that Jesus was teaching them. I haven't read a version that says that. They were amazed at his understanding, okay? So that's something that we need to understand. But what this leads me to think of is I should have some sort of expectation of understanding for my children. Now, I cannot expect my children to have the understanding of God the way that Jesus did. They have a connection that my kids will never have. But I can expect them to have an understanding of why we believe what we believe, and I can hold them to that standard. And even the teachers that were amazed. Any teacher of the Word of God should have an expectation that the children raised in godly homes by godly parents should have an understanding of their belief. I always enjoy getting to talk to the teachers and finding out, and I'm not going to shout any names out or anything, but how many kids are doing what and what they're knowing and what they're learning. Our teachers are very invested. They care a lot about the way that our kids are coming up and what they learn and what they believe. And I think this particular expectation of understanding must come from the godly parents, but also from the church as well. I want you guys to be mentors to my children. You know a lot about this that I don't know. We lean on each other, okay? And so they found him in the temple, sitting among the teachers, asking them questions. All who heard him were amazed at his understanding and his answers. He was 12 years old. He knew something. He was, after all, 100% man, which means he was a boy. He had to learn. I can expect understanding of God's way from my boy as well. Verse 48 through 50. And when his parents saw him, they were astonished. And his mother said to him, "Son, why have you treated us so? Behold, your father and I have been searching for you in great distress." And he said to them, "Why were you looking for me? Did you not know that I must be in my father's house?" And they did not understand the saying that he spoke to them. This one has 2 points in it. First of all, I don't have to be the first one to tell you that kids say really strange things. If I've learned anything so far as a parent, my kids say some really weird things. And sometimes they say amazing things. Sometimes they say things that are unbelievable. But they expect me to listen to them all the time. And it's important that we listen to them all the time. I'm going to tell on Fawn because she's too old. She's too young to care. We're in the house, right? And we're just hanging out. We're doing something, and she says a bad word. Where did you get this from? Where did you hear this? And I'm thinking of Paul and Janet. They're elders at New Wally, like, what are they teaching her? No, I'm just joking. I'm joking. But anyways, so this is happening, and I'm going on, and so I ask her. I said, "Where did you hear this at?" And she says, "In my dreams." "In your dreams?" "Yeah, sure, you little liar." "In your dreams." Well, 4 or 5 days later, this has been on my mind, where could she be picking something like this up from? And we live in a 3-story house, well, tri-level. We're not like fancy or anything, but her room is directly above our room in our house. And one of my favorite shows is Forged in Fire, where you make knives on these anvils and stuff. And these guys said that word that she said, and it was during her bedtime, and it clicked. I heard it in my dreams. She wasn't lying to me. What she said was unbelievable, but it didn't click until I had that realization. Imagine when Jesus said to his parents, "I must be about my Father's business." And then like 15 to 17 years later, Mary's like, "Hey, young man, you make more wine." You know what I mean? She had no idea what she was dealing with at this point. They didn't understand what he said. "I must be about my Father's business." But now, 15, 17 years later, when we're reading about the first miracle recorded, who said, "Go make that wine"? It was his mother. It had made sense. It says later on that she treasured these things in her heart. I believe that that is what we are supposed to be doing if we want to raise good Christian children. We listen to them, and we treasure the things that they tell us in our hearts. And the second point is one that we shouldn't be surprised about. We shouldn't be surprised when our kids do what we want to do, right? Like I was stating, they're faithful Jewish people. It is their custom to be doing and holding this godly routine. Jesus asked this question that says, "Well, didn't you know where I was at? Like, isn't this the whole reason we're here?" It's a very powerful question if you think about it. Yeah, absolutely. You know what? You're right, dude. 12-year-old teaching me something? I don't like this. But sometimes our kids say things that really put it into perspective for us. Children want to be included in what we do at a young age. How can I assure that I'll raise a godly man? Well, I'll include him in the godly things that godly men do. Study the word. Help the widows. Help the orphans. Serve one another. Get involved in church. Whatever it is in my routine that sparks a light for God in my child, no matter the age, best believe that is what they will be included in. It shouldn't surprise us that our kids want to do what we do, and sometimes to greater extents. And we want that for them most of the time. If you're a good parent, you want your child to do better than what you did. And so if I'm not living that way, my child's going to take interest in whatever else I'm investing my time in. Does that make sense? So don't be surprised when they do what you want to do. If you're devoting your time to godly customs, you're going to find them in the temple. If you're devoting your time to macaroni and cheese and TV, you're going to find them on the couch. Does that make sense? Verse 51. And he went down with them and came to Nazareth and was submissive to them. And his mother treasured up all these things in her heart. You have to be the parent sometimes, is what I got out of this one. Which is really hard because I like my girls. I hate making them cry, and we have a lot of fun. But I don't want them to like me. I want them to respect me. The first thing I want to notice is that Jesus was submissive to his parents. He was at that point amazing the people around him. Have you ever tried to get a kid who's got the attention of the whole room to calm down? Parents can't usually do that, you know? Everybody's trying to hide their Snickers and turn away. I'm guilty of it. But what did Jesus do? With the maturity of a man, it says, he was submissive to his parents. He went down with them. He was submissive. And his mother treasured that in her heart. What was Jesus' discipline routine? Did Joseph spank him once a week? Did he put soap in his mouth? We don't know. They don't tell us that. But we do know that as a child, as the Son of God on earth, he was submissive to his parents. And that's important to know. And so, sometimes to be a good parent, you have to not be their friend and be a parent. And it breaks my heart to say, but it's true. And then finally, verse 52. And Jesus increased in wisdom and in stature and in favor with God and man. And this one, I said, is our end goal. That's what we want for our children, right? That is what we want. The wisdom spoken of here is the wisdom in God, and it's not an earthly wisdom. It's spiritual wisdom. All right? And then the stature refers to reputation, earthly ideals. So if I want my boy and my children to grow in favor with God, they need to grow in the wisdom of the Scriptures. And I have to be ensuring of that. And if I want them to grow in favor with man, I must make sure that they have good reputations. Which means I must have a good reputation, right? It's a very, very slippery slope that we can get on trying to figure out how we want to raise our children. But, and it eats at you sometimes. It eats at me a lot. It was really hard for me I had to take the sermon from about 15 pages down to the 6 that I have because there's so much that I wanted to say. But really, I think the Scriptures say it all. And so this evening, we explored this passage of Jesus' childhood in Luke 2:41 through 52. And we've been searching for ways that we can be more assured that we can raise men and children of God. And we discovered that we can help determine that we raise children of God by our routine of godly commands and functions as parents. And as parents, knowing that we are going to make some pretty big mistakes, but you know what? We turn the caravan around and we go and we fix them. By parents, we can help ensure that we expect an understanding out of our children so that when it's time for them to become the men and women they're supposed to be, they're firm in their faith. By listening to our children and encouraging them in the ways of God. It's important. It's very important. Sometimes your kid will be saying something to you about how they want to serve or how they want to do it, and you'll be like, oh, that's way out of your league. That's way over what you can do. Well, how do you know? They haven't done it yet. Encourage our children in the ways of God by reminding them which position they are in, and that's their children, and we are the parents, and we will follow the commands of God in this household. And by being in the Word of God with them, which results in godly wisdom and favor with God. And so that is the end of what I pulled out of Luke 2, 41 through 52. Again, I had a lot more material, but I wanted to make it narrow and basic. I'm not trying to tell you how to raise your children. Just show you how it looks like Jesus was raised. And then you do your own parenting from there. So I hope this study has been insightful and encouraging. And at this time, as is custom, I'd like to offer up an invitation. If you're all wanting to learn more about how the Bible teaches us to raise our children, come talk to somebody or come forward. And perhaps you've already been in the Word and you'd like to put Christ on in baptism. We could get a twofer today, maybe. That'd be cool. And so whatever your need is tonight, please come forward as Bobby leads us in singing.